In this video, we will know about the pandemic that happened a decade ago that will not be forgotten in the history books. The world had been struck by a global pandemic which was responsible for the death of at least 50 million people, and it is estimated that about 500 million people, or one third of the world's population, became infected with the virus. It is widely known as the Spanish flu. Of the year 1918, it is also called as H1N1. It is a viral infection that attacks your respiratory system, your nose, throat, and lungs, for example. Most experts think that the flu was spread mainly by droplets made when people cough, sneeze, or talk. People can spread it to the others up to about 6 feet away. Imagine how far that is? So, they thought that these droplets can land in the mouth or noses of the people who are nearby or possibly be inhaled into the lungs. As of today, some historians believe that in Aldershot, UK, Staples, and France, where World War I trenches were seen as the source of the disease. It was first identified in the military personnel back in the spring of 1918. The outbreak in 1918 during the final months of the World War I, historians believe that the conflict may have been partly responsible for the spreading the virus. On the Western Front, soldiers living in cramped, dirty and damp conditions became ill. This was a direct result of weakened immune systems from malnourishment. Their illness, which were known as la grippe, translated to English which means influenza, were infectious and spread among the ranks. Within around 3 days of becoming ill, many soldiers would start to feel better, but not would all make it. During the summer of 1918, as troops began to return home and leave, they brought with them the undetected virus that had made them ill. The virus spread across cities, towns, and villages in the soldiers' home countries. Many of the infected, both in soldiers and civilians, did not recover rapidly. The virus was hardest on young adults between the ages of 20 and 30 who had previously been healthy. The second one was believed that comes from Shanxi province in China. A respiratory disease outbreak in 1917 may have been the first stirrings of the flu. Historian Mark Humphreys of Canada's Memorial University of Newfoundland says that newly unearthed records confirm that one of the side stories of the war, the mobilization of 96,000 Chinese laborers to work behind the British and French lines on World War I's Western Front, may have been the source of the pandemic. The last origin was believed in Kansas in the US, where the Camp Funston 48 soldiers died in March 1918, just ahead of the outbreak. By the summer of 1918, the flu pandemic came to an end, as those that were infected either died or developed an immunity. During the Spanish flu, officials in some communities imposed quarantines, ordered citizens to wear masks, and shut down public places, including schools, churches, and theaters. People were advised to avoid shaking hands and to stay indoors. Libraries put help in lending books, and regulations were passed banning spitting. In US, their American Public Health Association, or also known as APA, issued measures in a report to limit large gathering. They believed that any type of gathering of people sharing the same room was dangerous. They closed salons, dance halls, cinemas, and also the funerals since they said that it is an unnecessary gathering. They give different opening and closing hours of the stores and factories to prevent overcrowding and for people to work from home when possible. Some regulations in other places like Britain were milder, such as limiting music hall performances less than 3 consecutive hours and allowing a half an hour for ventilation between shows. In Switzerland, there are cinemas, theaters, concerts, and shooting matches were all suspended when the pandemic struck, which led to a state of panic. The response of the countries varies due to the difference in authority of the public health agencies and social acceptance of their measures as necessary. The mortality is high in ages younger than 5, 20 years old to 30. What if another pandemic like the Spanish flu appears? Are we ready? Unlike when the 1918 Spanish flu hit, the doctors and scientists were unsure what caused it or how to treat it. Unlike today, there were no effective vaccines or antiviral drugs that treat the flu. In fact, the first licensed flu vaccine appeared in America in 1940s, 22 years after the Spanish flu has ended. By the following decade, vaccine manufacturers could routinely produce vaccines that would help control and prevent future pandemics. What if a pandemic appears today? How should we respond? From the history we learned from the 1918 Spanish flu, as soon as a pandemic is confirmed, the World Health Organization or WHO should immediately imply quarantines on all positive affected areas, stop all planes and boats from operations, close all crowded places, and stop all unnecessary gatherings that may cause the spread of the virus. Unlike then, we now have many media platforms like social media, television, and radios to alert the masses. Knowing that there is a pandemic, this would help reduce the risk of pandemic spreading across the countries. Also, advise the people to use face masks like N95 that could help reduce of becoming infected. Also, with the medical advancements, the World Health Organization should immediately carefully test the people with the virus. With these results coming from the tests, we could immediately eliminate the pandemic. Thank you, and I hope that you learned something new today. With the COVID-19, always remember to wear your mask. Goodbye!